contours because it seemed like there would be more people that needed to be here. So I just want to stress this is a city meeting. We'll use the typical rules that govern city meetings, and what I will be doing is this is really focused on issues that are clearly related to the tragedy that happened today. I'm going to ask Mike Sherling to really take our way through this. It's a police issue. So, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for coming in. Certainly our condolences with anyone who is acquainted with the victim in this tragedy. The primary reason that we wanted to meet and discuss issues right now is because the priorities in the park have changed substantially in the last few hours. Not related specifically to the movement, but related to the fact that we have other business we've got to conduct in there that's incredibly important right now. The park is the scene of an active investigation, and as a result, there are very critical things that we've got to do to bring closure not only for the victim but for his family and friends. As a result, there are large portions, if not the entire park, that we've got to maintain as closed over the next little while. That is because we don't know all the facts involved in this case. So it's about maintaining the scene, the crime scene, if you will. Don't read too much into the fact that it's called a crime scene. It's a fairly generic term. At the same time, we have concerns regarding safety that didn't exist 4 hours ago. We as well as I imagine you, could not have foreseen an issue like this arising in the park, given what's been going on. We could not have predicted this. But as a result of its occurrence, we're now faced with trying to assess what else we can't predict in terms of safety. So we've got to balance all of those things. We've got to make some very complicated and difficult decisions. And as with most things in Burlington, we don't do that in a vacuum. So we're certainly interested to hear from you as well. But we need, I think, some space and some deference. I think it's been a good relationship between the city and the Occupy movement so far, notwithstanding a couple of ordinances that folks aren't complying with. By and large, when the city's made requests, they've been honored, and vice versa. So it's been a decent relationship. The landscape has changed substantially. So we ask now for some deference that we've got some very serious responsibilities to tend to in the park. And simultaneously, we've got some very serious responsibilities for overall safety, primarily yours, because for some folks, they're in the park all the time, and we're responsible for that. So it's a complicated and evolving scenario. First and foremost, our duties to the victim, his family, and for the safety of the city. And secondarily now, it's about what's happening in terms of the message that you all are trying to project. So that's it in a nutshell. In terms of what that means to translate that into sort of the basics are that we need control of the park at least for the next 24 hours until we're able to unpackage what happened, to be sure that we're going down the right investigative avenues, which means that there won't be access to the tents that are cordoned off. And at this point, I think the assessment from our investigators is that we need to expand that inner scene because we don't have all the answers yet. And oftentimes it takes a couple of days to really get solid investigative direction. In this case, primarily to ensure that we're not missing anything. The preliminary indication, as most of you know, is that this is a self-inflicted wound. They don't always turn out that way. That's just the preliminary indication. So we need to be sure that that's the case. And as a result, we need to do things as though that weren't the case until we're able to eliminate all other possibilities. We will try to be as transparent as possible as we work through this. Then the secondary issue is to what extent can we assure safety with structures that are opaque inside the park, which is an anomaly in a park. So we're still working through what exactly that means. We're interested in hearing from you a little bit on that particular topic. But those are the things that we're contemplating right now. It is not at all about how to inhibit your ability to express the issues that are at hand here. Our role as a law enforcement agency is to protect free speech. we have to do that with deference to safety and the other things that I've already described. So that's the perspective that we're coming from. I think it probably makes sense to entertain some questions and maybe have a little discussion. And I don't, if you want to have a facilitator pick who's answering the questions, that's fine, or I can do it. It doesn't matter to me. So we'll start at that end and go this way.
I am homeless. All my stuff is in my tent. It's on the very edge of the pit. Will
Okay.
I be able to get in to get my possessions so I can sleep comfortably tonight?
That's an excellent question. So the answer is yes, if. So what happens when we have an area secure, this is not unlike any other scene. So imagine for a moment this was someone's house and they needed something out of that house in order to go to work the next day. The way it works is you have two options. You can allow us to just hold on to it until we're done with it, and we will not search it unless we develop probable cause and get a warrant from a judge. Alternatively, if you want access to it now, you can allow us to search it to make sure there's nothing there of evidentiary value in the investigation, and we can release it to you as soon as we're done with that. If you want to have a more detailed conversation about that after we're done, I'm happy to do that.
So I want to express one fear I have, and that is that in Madison, Wisconsin, in the occupation at the beginning of the year, the excuse used by the police is that they were necessarily needed to kick everyone out in order to clean the building. They said it wasn't about kicking out the occupation, it wasn't about ending the movement. When they finally succeeded in pushing everyone out of the building, they immediately implemented new rules and kept everyone coming out. It was clear in regards to the attempted cleaning of Zuccotti Park that it was mandated by the state. They needed to do it because of laws, because of other regulations, and at the same time they're implementing new rules trying to inhibit people from expressing and partaking in this new social movement. Ultimately, they failed in kicking people out of the park because of strong response. I'm wondering what reassurance we have, if any, that this isn't the same thing. The state and Burlington isn't simply using this as an excuse to move people out of the park, to then retake control and to put a stopping block in this social movement and in this uprising movement.
That's a valid question. What I can tell you is, what I heard in there were a couple of things. One, is the city going to try to implement new rules? There have been no discussions at any level since this began about any new rules. The question for us at hand, though, is candidly, can we assure safety in the space if the tents continue to exist? And I don't know the answer to that question yet, but I think we are leaning toward the answer that is, we don't know what's happening in the tents, and you don't know what's happening in the tents, and we can't assure that you're safe in there as they exist today, as you can't see through things. We are, and I don't want to speak for the mayor, but we've had this conversation repeatedly. We exist to ensure that you have the right to free speech. The park is open from 6 a.m. until midnight every day, and no one is going to inhibit your ability to assemble there, to demonstrate there, to have whatever types of events obviously aren't hazardous or violate any major laws within reason. Basically, the things you've been doing absent the tents. So that's kind of where we're at. That's the current thought process. Did I miss anybody going this way? Yeah. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Maggie Hart. I would like to take a moment. I was with Josh. And the highlight of this day was my goal was to get up on time to go to labor ready for work. I'm shook up. He went to the store to buy yogurt, and I kept saying, Josh, I don't like yogurt, but he said, Maggie, just try it once. He had a wonderful day. He was playing music. He's very articulate. We help one another. I'm currently living in City Hall Park. I've lost my home too to a domestic violence situation, but I'd rather be homeless and hopeful than rich and miserable. But may I take this moment to send a prayer to his 2-year-old daughter and his family. And first and foremost, may God receive him. Because my dad killed himself when I was 10 years old. And I was currently at the position outside my tent, next to Josh, and heard it go
Yes, ma'am.
I know it's today about how, as a camp, we are not really equipped to deal with some of the more pressing issues of homelessness or mental illness or any of these things, because we are not professionals, and we've been hearing rumors on our camp that COTS or other homeless shelters have been denying people with addiction problems or mental illness, and they've been sending them to us. And I was hoping that this would be a really good reminder to the state to help out these people who are homeless or mentally ill and to make sure that they're taken care of, because clearly that didn't happen if someone felt the need to take their lives. And I'm wondering what kind of support, because we've created a community where anyone can come and be fed and taken care of and given shelter. And I'm really hoping that this is a reminder to the state that everyone deserves that kind of dignity. And I'm asking what you can say to that.
Thanks for your comments. Relative to sort of emergent mental health issues, I know our street outreach team was around this afternoon to provide support in the wake of the tragedy. I can speak very briefly on in terms of larger systemic issues. The city and the police department in particular are engaged actively with the Department of Mental Health and the Agency of Human Services regarding the need to enhance services on a variety of levels, in particular mental health and substance abuse. So you're, I believe, right on the money in terms of needs. Unfortunately, I'm not sure we're going to solve those particular issues in the next couple of days in this context.
Chief, Keith McGilvery from Channel 3. What can you say to folks at home who are curious about the future of this site as it exists now, and when will those decisions be made?
I think I just laid most of that out. Were you here for the...
Yeah, we just need
okay.
to do that.
Let me get, if you don't mind, let me go around the room and then I'll spend some time with you guys when we're done. I won't forget you. Sir?
My question is pretty much going to be very similar to hers. But yeah, let's get like a real answer though of what the city practically can do to help us in the occupation. We need some practical, serious answers about, because here we are, we're doing the job of the state, taking care of the homeless and the mentally ill. Waterbury's been flooded. We know that that's a natural disaster, not necessarily your fault, the state's fault, and that it's not there anymore. But what are we going to do about it right now? Because we have all these people, flooding into us, and we're trying to take care of them for you. We're trying to make it so that, the community is healthier, okay? They're not out there robbing homes elsewhere. We're sitting there dealing with them, trying to give them options and solutions. And we really could use some real serious conversation and not just a few, words saying that you're working on it. We want some real solutions about what you guys can do to really help us. And I know a lot of the street outreach teams, and I've talked to them, okay? And they really don't have the resources to do it.
Absolutely. I concur 100%. When the resources don't exist at a higher level, it falls to municipalities to pick up the pieces. And we bear the burden of that as a law enforcement agency.
Mic check. Mic check. Are we being pushed out of the camp as we speak while our backs are to the camp?
Are we being pushed out of the camp as we speak while our backs are to the camp?
If I may.
Yes.
As I indicated, folks, I can't tell you exactly what's going on right this second, but no one's going to...
Okay, let's go. Meeting adjourned.
No.